to welcome you back to Thrive in the Word. I'm so glad that you've decided to join us for this time of studying the Word of God. You know, as we study verse by verse through the Word of God, you know what happens? It changes our lives. It changes the way we think. It changes not only the way we think, but it changes the way we act. You see, we need to understand that when our thinking changes, our actions change. When we get the Word of God here in our minds, you know what happens? It begins to purify. It begins to cleanse. It begins to correct wrong thinking. And when wrong thinking is corrected, you know what happens? Automatically, your actions will change. And that's why it's so vitally important that we study the Word of God, but that we also study the Word of God in a verse by verse way, because that's the way of really getting it into us. I have a good friend who lives in South Africa, and we have eaten together many times. And she chews her food 20 chews per bite. I many times laugh at her because, I mean, it's just the way that she does it. But you know what? Really, she's getting more out of her food than I am. Why? Because she's taking the time to chew on it, to make it so that it's properly digested. And you know what? That's the way it is with the Word of God. You need to chew on it. You need to think on it. Not just go over it and just skim over it, but think about it. Now here in 2 John, the 4th verse, and this is what it says: how happy I was to meet with some of your children and find them living according to the truth, just as the Father commanded. Now, what's John talking about? Well, first of all, the lady that John is talking about, I believe, is the church in Ephesus. You see, the church at Ephesus was really the epicenter, even though the Apostle Paul had hit other churches in his travels through Asia Minor. The Apostle Paul really spent his time ministering in the city of Ephesus. He had a school in the city of Ephesus, and from that school, people went out and started other churches in the Asia Minor area, or what we would call Turkey today. And I believe what John is saying here is that he's saying, how happy I was to meet with some of your children. And he's talking here and he's personifying the church. And the church that he's talking about is the church at Ephesus. But now her children would be churches in Colossia and Laodicea and several other cities that were closely related to the city of Ephesus and to the church at Ephesus. And so John says, how happy I was to meet your children. And then he goes on and he really begins to focus in on what he's going to be talking about. And this is what he says: and find them living according to the truth. What is John saying? He's saying, I am really happy. I am overjoyed with knowing that not only are you, the church here in Ephesus, this lady that I'm talking about, not only are you living in truth, but your children, these other churches, they are living in truth. You see, there's two things that John really wants to talk about here in this letter. He wants to talk about loving each other, and we're going to get into that later. But he really wants them to understand that it's vitally important that we live in truth. You see, we're living in a time and a day and an age where truth is no longer absolute. At least that's what we've been told. Now, that's a complete lie, because there is an absolute truth. And it's found in Jesus. It's found in God. It's found in His Word. But not only is it good to know the truth, but we need to set as our perspective, we need to set as our goal to live the truth. Now, I've taught many, many pastors all around the world. And one of the things I always tell them, the way you live your life is the greatest message that your people will ever receive from you. We need to live the truth. We need to not only know the truth, again, it's important to know the truth, because if you don't know the truth, you can't live the truth. But we need to live the truth. We need to show the world the truth. And John says that he's so overjoyed, he's so happy that he's finding these other churches, and what are they doing? They are living in the truth. And then John says this, just as the Father commanded. You see, living in the truth is not just a good idea. Living in the truth is something that God has told us that we need to do. You know, many times in these days that we're living in, I see so many believers and they're not living in the truth. Are they believers? Will they go to heaven? You know what? I hope so. But are they showing the world the truth? Are they living what they believe? You see, we need to grab a hold of this as believers. We need to grab a hold of it and realize that this isn't just a good suggestion from God, but that God is commanding us. He's commanding us to live in the truth, to do what's right. Not only to know what's right, but to do it. Now, very quickly, we're going to just start on verse number 5. And it says, I am writing to remind you, dear friends. Now, what's he doing? He's writing this to remind them. Now, he has already talked about this in 1 John. But how many of you know we all need a reminder? We all need to be reminded. Now, I've heard people say, well, I've already heard that. I've already heard that I need to love my neighbor as myself. But you know what? We need a reminder. And sometimes, to be real honest with you, sometimes I need a reminder on a daily basis. I think you do too. A reminder of what walking in truth really is. And you see, that's what John is talking about here in this book, 2 John. He's reminding them of what the truth really is. Now, I hope that you join us again tomorrow as we continue this study in the book of 2 John.